When you think of the first president of the United States, only one name comes to mind. But let me start by asking you this. Could the first president of a country have not wanted to be president? Could there be someone who was offered a monarchy in their name and refused it? Could someone have taken one of the most powerful seats in history without belonging to any political party? Today we will talk about the unknown sides of George Washington, who is mentioned in school books in just a few lines, but actually shaped the fate of America. And by the end of the video, you will probably say, I never knew this about this man. George Washington, the first president of the United States, took office on April 30th, 1789. But what made him interesting was not just being the first. The truly interesting thing was that he almost built the presidency from scratch. That seat didn't exist. The powers were not defined. The rules were not written. And Washington, unknowingly, became the person who started many traditions that are still valid today. When George Washington was elected president, he did not belong to a political party. He was even against parties. Today, when it comes to politics in America, harsh polarization comes to mind. But Washington foresaw long ago that this would divide the nation. In his farewell address when leaving office, he said, "Parties will weaken the nation." These words remain one of the most important warnings studied by presidents in textbooks in America. Another surprising fact. George Washington refused the offer of a monarchy. After the War of Independence was won, some officers wanted Washington to become king. Because the people believed in him, the army was loyal to him, he had power. But Washington reacted angrily to this idea. If he had accepted, today America might not have been a republic, but a monarchy. This decision was one of the most critical moments that defined America's DNA. The most important yet quiet decision Washington made during his presidency was this. He served only 2 terms and left voluntarily. At that time there was no limit to the term. He could have been president for life if he wished, but he did not. This behavior started the 2-term rule tradition in America. This tradition was practiced for more than 150 years without being written into law, until Franklin D. Roosevelt. Now let's move on to some lesser-known aspects. George Washington did not have his own teeth. He suffered from dental problems for much of his life. But contrary to popular belief, his teeth were not made of wood. He had prosthetics made of ivory, metal, and even human teeth. That's why he struggled when speaking. The serious and solemn facial expression in portraits was partly because of this. Another surprising detail. Washington placed his hand on the Bible during the inauguration, but the phrase, "So help me God," was not written in the Constitution. He added this phrase himself. And since that day, almost all succeeding presidents have used the same expression. So many of the details of the inauguration ceremonies watched by millions today originated from Washington's personal choices. During his presidency, Washington did not love luxury, but he also took authority very seriously. In the first presidential residence, he appeared before the public at a certain distance, because he did not want the presidency to become ordinary. According to him, this office should be respected, but should not create fear. Maintaining this balance was perhaps the hardest part of his presidency. Another little-known aspect. George Washington actually owned slaves. This is one of the most debated topics in American history. The leader of the war for freedom was also part of slavery. But later in life, his thoughts changed. In his will, he requested that his slaves be freed after his death. This decision was quite unusual for that time. During Washington's presidency, the country was almost falling apart. The Whiskey Rebellion, triggered by taxes, was the federal government's first major crisis. And interestingly, Washington was the only American president to personally lead the army to suppress a rebellion. This shows that the presidency was not only symbolic, but when necessary, a position of strong authority. When his term ended, Washington returned home quietly, not to a big applause, no show, no fight over a legacy. But he left behind an invisible guide on how to run the presidency, an example of how to limit power and a political stance that is still valid today. Today, presidents come and go in America, but the office they occupy continues to exist within the framework drawn by George Washington. He was not just the first president, he was the person who defined what the presidency is. If this video gave you new insights, and you are curious about other surprising firsts in America's history, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel so we can explore together.